The 2025 track and field calendar is horrible, but I absolutely love it. First off, Grand Slam track, they finally announced the 4 cities as well as the 4 dates for which they'll be holding their slams throughout 2025. We're gonna see one in Kingston, one in Miami, one in Philly, and then the last one in Los Angeles, all from April down to June. This is already gonna be adding to an extremely packed schedule for 2025, where the World Championships is going to be the final meet of the year. Now, this isn't exactly something new, as we have seen either Worlds or Olympics as the last meet of the season, just based on scheduling in some capacities. 2019 World Championships in Doha, 2000 Sydney Olympics, as well as the 1988 Olympic Games in Seoul, South Korea. But on top of that, we're also gonna see a ton of meets from World Indoors, World Relays, Grand Slam track, like I noted, the Diamond League, the Continental Tour, you have NCAAs, you have National Championships. All these meets are going to be on the calendar and filling things up, making it extremely complicated for athletes, for coaches, for meet directors, for fans. Everyone is gonna have to be able to keep up to date with all the track that's gonna be going on throughout the year. And I actually thought that Worlds being at the very end of the calendar would probably free things up, but nah, the schedule is absolutely packed. And not only that, there's a few notable conflicts that we have to take into consideration. So let's kind of talk through some of these major meets that are gonna be on the calendar, and then we'll see some of the conflicts and issues that I'm kind of alluding to. And then I also wanna compare 2025 to the previous years I noted, 2019, 2000, and 1988. First off, indoor season. This, for the most part, is pretty straightforward. We're gonna have the World Indoor Tour starting in late January, going all the way down to late February across all the world. It's gonna be very similar to 2024, so not many changes here. USA Indoors, as well as the NCAA Conference Championships, those will be in late February. We're gonna have the European Indoor Championships. Those will be going down in the Netherlands. Those will be happening in early March. We'll also see the NCAA Championships happening in about mid-March, and then things will cap off with the World Indoor Championships in Nanjing, China. Those will be going down at the very end part of March. So again, for the most part, indoors is pretty consistent, very similar to last year, so no major conflicts. But remember, I'm comparing this a little bit to previous years in 2019, 2000, and 1988, where they also had a global championships at the end of the year. In those years, we actually did not have a World Indoor Championships. 2019, 2000, or 1988, no World Indoor Championships those years. Now, we have had World Indoors during a World Championship year, for example, last year in 2023, or even during an Olympic year, for example, 2016, we had a World Indoor Championships that year as well. But during a World Championships at the end of the season, we've never had a World Indoor Championships at the same time. So that's gonna present an interesting dynamic where will some athletes compete indoors and then hold on all the way down to September to compete at the World Outdoor Championships? Or will we see a plethora of athletes probably skip the indoor season and just focus on outdoors? But let's talk about that outdoor season. This is where things really start to get very, very interesting. At the top of the outdoor season, we're going to have a lot of meets in China. Like I said, you're gonna have World Indoors. That's gonna be March 21st to 23rd. Then you'll have the Ximen Diamond League. That's gonna be happening on April 26th. That'll be followed by the Shanghai/Suzhou Diamond League on May 3rd. And then the World Relays is happening in Guangzhou, China on May 10th. So essentially, athletes in theory could stay a month and a half, 2 months or so in China for their entire time, from World Indoors all the way down to World Relays. Maybe they set up base camp in Japan for a little bit. That probably could be a factor for some athletes. And I think that World Athletics set it up very specifically to do so. But there are some conflicts, especially when talking about Grand Slam track. Grand Slam track's first meet is going to be on April 4th to 6th in Kingston, Jamaica. And everyone was excited for that announcement. And that weekend, there's no real conflicts at that point. But Grand Slam track in Miami, that's happening on May 2nd to 4th. That does have a conflict with the Shanghai/Suzhou Diamond League happening on the exact same weekend. So it'll be interesting to see how, the pro group split up. There'll be some athletes, of course, competing in Grand Slam track, especially if they are signed racers, but then you might have some other athletes who decide to go out for the Diamond League. I don't think you'll see much conflict. I think both meets are still gonna have a really, really, high turnout in terms of top athletes, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But 1 week later, that's when you do have the World Relays in Guangzhou in southern China on May 10th. This is a very, very interesting dynamic because, again, World Athletics probably set up this schedule so that athletes can come to the first 2 Diamond Leagues in China and then 1 week later go right to the World Relays. But on top of that, World Relays is a required meet for countries to be able to qualify their relays, the 4x1, the 4x4, and the mixed relay to the World Championships in Tokyo later that year. Now, This isn't going to be, too complicated for countries like the United States. The United States might even get a wild card to the World Championships because they have like a top time. Maybe some other countries as well. But majority of the countries, they're going to have to compete there. And all these countries are not like the United States. They don't have the depth of athletes to be able to just field out any team and qualify to the Worlds. You're going to have athletes like Marlita Paulino from the Dominican Republic. She's probably going to be pivotal to the Dominican Republic's 4x4, maybe mixed relay as well. You're going to have athletes like a Rochelle Clayton or Rashawn Clark. Maybe Jamaica is going to need them to qualify to the World Championships later on that year. Let's not forget that Jamaican men, they had a lot. I don't even think they made their 4x4 to the Olympic Games. So athletes like Paulino, like Rashawn Clark, like Rochelle Clayton, they are competing in Grand Slam track as racers. And who knows who else is going to be announced, but they might be needed for these world relays. Are they going to go from Miami on May 2nd to 4th and then take a 15-hour flight out to China for the May 10th world relays? Who knows? But that's one thing to take into consideration. Another comparison marker, 2019, 2000, and 1988. 2000 and 1988, the world relays didn't exist at that point. 2019, we did see the world relays that year in Yokohama, Japan, but they were not required for teams to qualify to the Doha World Championships. 2024 and 2025 are the first years where countries have to use the world relays to qualify to the World Championships. So it's going to be very interesting to see what actually plays out, but that's not the only conflict. Another thing is the NCAA. Let's not forget these NCAA athletes. Look at what happened in 2024. We saw some athletes like Christopher Morales-Williams from Georgia. We saw Samuel Ogazi competes for Alabama. They actually went to the World Relays in Bahamas to compete for their countries, right? Canada as well as Nigeria respectively. And some other athletes from the NCAA as well, they went down to the Bahamas to compete for their countries to help them qualify to the Olympic Games in their respective relays. That's not happening this year, or it's very, very unlikely that that's gonna happen. Remember, Bahamas is like a 1-2 hour flight from the United States, from their college. They were able to hop down to the Bahamas and then hop right back to the United States. Nah, they're not taking a 15, maybe 20+ hour flight all the way out to Guangzhou. Why? The World Relays on May 10th is only 1 week before the NCAA Conference Championships actually kick off. And I'm talking about the power conferences, right? SEC, Big 12, Big 10, ACC. Those conferences have their championships on May 15th to about May 18th, that weekend. I don't think they're going to be risking their athletes going all the way out to China just to potentially qualify for the World Championships in the relays. They want their athletes on campus or at their conference championships, getting those points, getting them set for the rest of the season. I don't know what's going to happen. That may hurt some countries' ability to actually qualify because a lot of these NCAA athletes from countries around the world, they are pivotal to their nations qualifying in their relays. So we'll see how that plays out. But let's go through the rest of the schedule. The remainder of May, it's pretty straightforward. Doha Diamond League on May 16th, Rabat Diamond League May 25th. But then you do have the Grand Slam track meet in Philly on May 29th to June 1st. That does slightly conflict with the Kip Keino Classic, which is on May 31st, but I don't think that's, too much of a massive conflict. You're gonna have a lot of athletes competing, at the Kip Keino Classic, but a lot of the African athletes, maybe some European athletes as well, some Americans who aren't in Grand Slam track, but I don't think it's gonna be a massive conflict, right? This isn't a Diamond League that's having a conflict here. So let's move over to June. And this is where things get very, very interesting. First off, Diamond Leagues, you have Rome, Oslo, Stockholm, Paris, all of them going down from June 6th to June 20th. But then you also have the LA Grand Prix, the FBK Games, you have the Ostrava Golden Spike. Those are also mixed in that time frame there. The NCAA Championships, those are going down from June 11th to June 14th. So for the most part, this June period is not too controversial. I'll maybe get back to NCAAs when we talk about USAs in a second, but the end of June, the last weekend of June 27th to June 29th. What we have here is Grand Slam track going down in Los Angeles. We also have the European Team Championships, maybe not as notable. You also have the New York City Grand Prix, and then finally, you have the Jamaican National Championships, National Senior Championships. Listen, this is gonna be an issue. First, you'll have athletes split between Grand Slam track, the New York City Grand Prix. Most athletes are probably gonna choose Grand Slam track because you're not only talking about the racers that have been announced, but you also have some challengers. So let's play a hypothetical where you have right now Kenny B, you also have Fred Curley. They're signed up as racers as part of Grand Slam track. Then, Noah Lyles, maybe he signs with Grand Slam track, maybe he doesn't, but he's gonna probably make a choice. do I want to run at the New York City Grand Prix all by myself? Or do I want to go to Grand Slam track maybe as a challenger and then actually get some good competition? Who knows? But I think that a lot of athletes are probably going to choose to run at Grand Slam track as opposed to New York City Grand Prix. That might, cause a little split. I don't know. We'll see. But the bigger issue here is Jamaican National Senior Championships. This is the exact same weekend as Grand Slam track's final meet in Los Angeles. The big issue here, there are so many Jamaicans who are running as part of Grand Slam track. I think right now we have Rochelle Clayton, we have Akira Nugent, and we have Rashawn Clark. Who knows? I wouldn't be surprised if we see more Jamaicans actually sign up as racers for Grand Slam track. But what are they going to do here? They have to go to their national championships. None of those athletes that I named, Akira, Rochelle, or Rashawn Clark, none of them have wildcards to the World Championships in Tokyo. None of them are defending world champions, so they don't get that wildcard. They have to compete at the national championships. Now, I guess there's some options, right? Do they get an exception from Jamaican athletics to compete in Tokyo because they are kind of some of the top athletes in the world? Do they potentially get an exception from Grand Slam track where they don't run in LA and they're allowed to run at their national championships? I don't know if that's like the best look from Grand Slam track because it's, again, their inaugural season. These are the racers. Who knows? Does maybe Jamaican champs, does that move a little bit later? Remember, the World Championships is all the way down in September. So I think there's a World Athletics set a window for when countries could hold their national championships, and they're mostly in August. I think there's 2 windows in August. I don't know if Jamaica maybe plans to move this meet a little bit later, so it's not 3 months before the World Championships, right? The USA Championships, those are going down at the first week of August. So I don't know, all those are options, but this is, I think, the biggest conflict on the schedule because, again, you have so many Jamaican athletes who are currently signed up as racers for Grand Slam track. Potentially more are going to be announced. And this is the inaugural season for Grand Slam track, their final meet, and it's conflicting with arguably the second most important meet for a Jamaican athlete on the calendar outside of the World Championships. Who knows? But that's going to be very interesting to watch play out as we go through the season. Let's move over to July. For the most part, July is pretty straightforward with 2 notable challenges, I'd say. Grand Slam track, it's done April to June, Los Angeles, June 27th to 29th. That's done, so no more conflicts there. We do have the Pre-Classic, Monaco Diamond League, London Diamond League. Those are all happening in July. You do have the USA Outdoor Championships. That's going down the first weekend in August. The only kind of interesting dynamic here is that the NCAA Championships, that was all the way back in June, right? That was June 11th to 14th. So that was 7 weeks prior to the USA Championships. Usually you'll see NCAAs maybe 2 to 3, 4 weeks prior to USAs. So there's a shorter time frame for NCAA athletes to prepare for their for the USA Championships. But here it's 7 weeks. Now, let's look back in history a bit. This exact same thing happened in 2019 when the Doha World Championships were all the way down in early October. The USA Championships actually happened in the middle of July, while the NCAA Championships happened early in June. They also had 7 weeks, and I know that the conversation is going to be around, oh, this is going to be too long for NCAA athletes. I don't know what they're going to do. They're going to wait around on campus. They're not going to be ready. I don't know. All those things could play into, how athletes prepare. But if we look back in 2019, we actually saw a decent amount of athletes go on to make the USA Championship team and do relatively well. Someone like Bryce Hoppel. Bryce Hoppel is a perfect example. He was running cross country in the fall of 2018, ran indoors in 2019, outdoors in 2019, was the NCAA champion, and then he went to USA's, qualified for the World Championship team to Doha, and he actually finished in 4th place in the Doha World Championship final in the 800 meters. Yes, it may not be a medal. I know that's like the standard of, oh, that was 6. No, like an athlete who competed throughout the NCAA season and had to wait 7 weeks for USAs after NCAAs, they went on to qualify and actually compete well in Doha. You also have a couple other athletes. You have Andrea Nellis from USC. She also made the 200-meter team in 2019. Casey Lightfoot in the pole vault, he made the team. You have Wadeline Jonathas from South Carolina. She actually went on to do very well at the Doha World Championships after qualifying for the USA team. You have Tiana Daniels. Tiana Daniels actually won the USA title in 2019 after competing in Texas in the NCAA, and then she went on to the World Championships in 2019 and did very well there, I think making the final at those World Championships. So all of this to say that I think these NCAA athletes are very likely going to be able to adjust to the 7 weeks here compared to some previous years and do as best as they can to make the team and potentially do well at the World Championships. Now, to be fair, I don't know the exact comparison on if 2019 actually produced less NCAA athletes making the team for USAs to the World Championships, or if it did produce a similar amount to previous years, but we'll see. I think athletes are definitely going to be able to manage for the most part. But let's fast forward through August. For the most part, big meets through August. You have Hungary, the Continental Tour, you have Silesia Diamond League, Lausanne Diamond League, the Brussels Diamond League, and the Diamond League final in Zurich, August 27th to August 28th. Now, this for the most part is going to be pretty straightforward, but this does kind of present interesting dynamics for athletes depending on where you're living in the world. For example, European and African athletes, this is absolutely perfect. You have all the Diamond Leagues either in Europe, or for African athletes, it's kind of in the same time zone. So you don't have to shift too much. African athletes are going to have to travel up to Europe, but they're going to be able to train and compete in the same time zone. And then they'll be able to go on over to Tokyo for the World Championships without having a massive shift of going back and forth. But that is going to be a slight issue for athletes who are in the Americas, North and South America, as well as Oceania, as well as Asia, right? Those athletes are going to be in their respective regions. Are they going to decide to go over to Europe to compete in the Diamond Leagues and in those other meets, dealing with those time changes, and then make a whole other trip to Tokyo to compete at the World Championships? Again, another massive time change. Are they going to do that? Or will we see some athletes just, for example, United States athletes, they're going to compete at the USA Championships on the first weekend of August, just, stay at their home base, train for a couple weeks, and then go straight to Tokyo, straight from there? Or are you going to see some athletes go to Europe? Maybe they compete at the first two meets, one or two early in August, and then they just take a trip to Tokyo, don't even worry about the Diamond League final. I don't know, but that is, I think, going to be one interesting dynamic that we'll see play out for athletes over the course of that August month. But the biggest issue here that I think is going to occur for everyone, specifically if they compete at that Diamond League final, is the time frame between the Zurich Diamond League and the start of the World Championships. Zurich Diamond League, it is only 2 weeks before the World Championships start in Tokyo. August 27th and 28th for the Zurich Diamond League, and then September 13th for the start of the Tokyo World Championships. And even, adding to this big issue is the fact that we're talking about Europe all the way to East Asia. This isn't the Olympic Games happening in Paris or the World Championships happening in Budapest. This is a big, big trip that athletes are gonna have to make. Athletes are gonna wanna set up their base camp. They're gonna wanna adjust to the time zone, get acclimated. All those things are gonna be important for athletes to do prior to getting to the World Championships. But this short time frame, 2 weeks, I don't know if that's going to be enough time for athletes to prepare as they would like to. So that goes back to the point. Are we going to see a lot of athletes competing at the Diamond League final? Who knows? But comparing to previous years, 2019, 2000, 1988, those years where the World Championships or the Olympics was at the very end of the season, this did not occur. We had at least three, sometimes even 4 weeks prior to the World Championships or Olympics from when the last meet of the season actually occurred. Now, I will say there was one occasion that this short time frame between the last meet and the World Championships actually did occur. 1991, actually the exact same scenario. The Zurich Diamond League and the World Championships in Tokyo that year were only 2 weeks apart. So there is precedent for this occurring, but again, this will be very, very tough for athletes to handle. Finally, at the end of the season, we get to the World Championships in Tokyo. This is gonna be the pinnacle of things, ending the season off in September. And this is gonna be the end of a very, very packed season. So just to kind of recap everything that went down through the season: World Indoor Tour, European Indoors, World Indoors, World Relays, the Diamond League, Grand Slam Track, the Continental Tour, NCAA Indoors and Outdoors, Jamaican Championships, USA Championships. All these meets are on the calendar. As a track fan, this is probably heaven, right? We're gonna be loving either attending the meets if you get a chance to go there, or watching them online wherever you're gonna be able to watch them. But it's also going to be a massive issue. Us as fans trying to find where all these meets are happening, trying to flip-flop between meets going on, the different streams, all these kind of things, gonna complicate it. And then even more so for the athletes. The athletes are gonna be making decisions on where am I gonna compete? Which meet will I compete at? Am I signed to Grand Slam Track? Or do I have to compete for my country at World Relays? How am I gonna determine if I'll go to the Diamond League final, or will I maybe give myself a little bit more time to prepare for the World Championships? All these factors are going to come into play and make it very complicated for athletes, for coaches, for meet directors, for everyone who's involved in the process. But I don't know, it's a little, organized chaos for the 2025 track and field season. Let me know what you think about this calendar. Let me know what you think about these massive conflicts that we might have on the calendar. Again, World Relays, Grand Slam Track, Jamaican Championships, NCAA Championships, all these things are kind of coming into play and making it a little complicated, but who knows? We'll see how it plays out. Let me know what you think. Always appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching.